From the East Brunswick Jewish Center, I'm Rabbi Jeff Paivo. This Shabbat is a distinctive one for Jews. It is called Shabbat Zachor. Zachor means remember. And the text that we add into our service in the Torah service, a special Torah reading, a special Haftarah, are meant to remind us to remember the evil of the Amalekites. They were the tribe who attacked the rear of the Israelites' procession through the wilderness, those who were least able to defend themselves, the weak, the infirm, the elderly. We remember that attack because it is really the model for what Judaism declares to be evil incarnate. When we mention the name Amalek, we remember that attack, both in the time of the Israelites in the wilderness and later in the time of Purim, which this Shabbat precedes. We do these readings at this time of year because the villain of the story of Purim in the Megillah, Haman, is thought to be a descendant, literally and figuratively, of Amalek. And so anytime an attack occurs on the Jewish people, or indeed on any people, which is meant to destroy them, a little bit at a time or all at once, we invoke the memory of Amalek. Whether it was the Nazis during the Shoah, or modern terrorists, or any of the string of public school shootings that we have seen so often in recent years. Any attack on those least able to defend themselves is another iteration of Amalek. So this week, as we look ahead to Purim, as we remember the evils of Amalek in our past, we see too that Amalek is never too far from our headlines or from touching each of our lives. We call on all those in the religious community, Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, to come together to fight Amalek wherever he occurs. When he shows up in our schools, we have to remind ourselves on this Shabbat and on Purim that Judaism and religion generally is meant to be the antidote to evil, the means by which we see God in the beliefs of our fellow people and in our actions. And so we remind ourselves of Amalek this week on Shabbat as we look ahead to Purim, not only to commemorate acts of evil in our past, but to remember that we have an obligation to stop such acts when we can, to move ahead politically and socially in our communities all over the country, to ways to ensure that acts of violence like these school shootings don't occur again. On Shabbat Zachor, we remember Amalek not only to re-immerse ourselves in our past, but to make acts of evil in the future unthinkable. We remind ourselves that we have an obligation to act in ways and to vote in ways that make sure that Amalek is never again on the ballot. From the East Brunswick Jewish Center, a Shabbat Shalom.